Kelly Staggs here, American Irrigator, trying to make you a better irrigator. Today, we're installing a Hunter HC flow meter. Now there's three things that you got to pay attention to when you're installing one of these meters. The first thing is you need to size the meter to the flow that you've got. So you need to get the right size meter. If you get one too big, it may not turn right and you may not get the right reading. Or if you get one too small, you may reduce your pressure too much. So, because you're gonna have some friction loss through one of these meters. So look at the charts, work with your supplier to make sure you get the right size for the amount of flows. You need to know the flow that you have through your main line, through all your zones, types of things, how much you're running at one time, and then size your meter accordingly. The next thing you're gonna have to pay attention to, when you're installing one of these, there's a certain amount of pipe you need before, a certain amount of pipe you need after. Now, if you look at the manual, it's gonna tell you, you've gotta have 10 times the diameter before, which would be your uphill side is 10 times before, your downhill side is 5 times the pipe diameter. So when you're installing one of these or any kind of meter or really just anything, hey, they give you the instructions that tells you exactly how to do it. But I did want to show you this so you know that I'm not making it up. The flow meter should be installed 10 times the pipe diameter before and 5 times the pipe diameter after the flow meter of straight pipe, which means no fittings within those distances before and after this water meter. And the reason you're doing that is because you're cutting down on turbulence. If you've got a fitting right before this, when water flows through that fitting, it actually is gonna have some turbulence, kind of like a spin, or I don't know exactly what it's gonna do, but it creates turbulence, and then what it might do is give you a false reading on your meter. So that's the reason on these meters why they have that. If that certain amount of pipe before is gonna cut down on that turbulence and after as well. And then the third thing, which really is one of the most important things too, is you wanna pay attention to your direction. This particular meter is a directional type meter. It's got an arrow. If you install this thing backwards, it's not gonna work right. So you need to install it, know which direction your flow is going, match that with your arrow, you're gonna be good to go. Now we're gonna put this thing in. I'll show you that length of pipe before and after. That way you've got an idea about it. All right, we're ready, but make sure you pay attention to your flow. I know my flow is coming this way. In fact, let me show you. This would be a good idea. There you go. My flow is coming that way, so let's look at the meter. Make sure we get it put in right. Arrow's going this way. Same one, there's one on both sides. That thing is gonna sit in there right like that. Let's glue it up. I use Schedule 80 female adapters on this. It's a 2-inch meter, so the threads were a 2-inch, and so I use a 2-inch Schedule 80 nipple. That's gonna give us a lot of strength because this thing's actually pretty heavy. The other thing I did is I put a piece of pipe right here, so it's actually gonna set on that. So that's gonna be good too. All right, here we go. Oh, there. Arrows facing the right direction. Not too bad. All right, we finally got our meter in, and I want to show you what we ended up with. We've got 2-inch. It's got to be 10 times the diameter on your inlet side, you know, before your meter. 2 times 10, 20 inches. What did we end up with? 24. So we're perfect right there. Now on your outlet side of your meter, you've got to have 5 times your pipe diameter. So it's 2 times 5 is 10, and we ended up with 16. We're plenty of distance before and after our water meter where this thing should pick up and read the gallons perfectly. Now, one of the other things I know I'm gonna get comments on, and somebody's gonna say, what in the world are you thinking? Now you see we go 2-inch into a 4-inch, and we actually came out of a 4-inch. The reason we had to do that is I couldn't put like a threaded reducer right here because the velocity from that 4-inch going straight into that meter, it would have had way too much turbulence and things like that. It would messed up the meter. And so they say you've got to have that pipe diameter, the 2-inch, on that distance before and after. And so you may also think, well, you've got a 4-inch line, you're running way too much through this 2-inch going through the meter. And we are gonna be pushing this section of pipe. So we've got 4 to 5 feet if you include the meter. So we are gonna have some major velocity and friction loss through this. Because usually this job runs about 80 gallons a minute, but it's gonna be okay. We're not gonna lose too much pressure through this part right here. We checked it, we looked at the charts. And so I know it looks funny, and even in my head, I'm like, oh, this is terrible. But it's the way they say to do it, so that's the way we're gonna do it. This is the right way to do it. And in fact, it was actually 0.06 PSI through this section of pipe. So basically we're losing no pressure. We'll lose more pressure through the meter, which is about 10 PSI regardless, is what we're gonna lose here. This system, I think it's still gonna work good because these zones are actually fairly small throughout here. We've got a lot of drip stuff, so we still should be all right in our pressure, but there's really only one way to find out. Turn it on and test it. So if you ever get in a situation where you're gonna install one of these, here's a few tips for you. And of course, always remember, try to keep your pipe as clean as possible. Have all the right tools. Do as much planning beforehand. That way when you come to do it and do this job, you've got everything, you know what you're doing, and you can put it together and everything's gonna work great. The main reason we put this meter in is it's got physical numbers on here. They're gonna be able to know all the gallons and all the water that's running through this system. We're gonna know exactly what it is with this meter right here.